Have you ever wondered why genuinely brilliant people still manage to make incredibly expensive mistakes? I mean, we're talking disastrous career moves, totally failed business strategies, or even just massive breakdowns in their personal lives. Usually, their intentions are perfectly fine, but they're operating with a completely flawed mental model of the world around them. Well, in today's explainer, we're diving into the ultimate fix for this: systems thinking. Basically, it's the ability to spot the hidden patterns before you actually make a move. So let's jump right in, because honestly, understanding these systems is going to completely change how you navigate practically everything.
To really get how systems thinkers view the world, think about a massive house fire. When most of us look at a burning building, our brains just scream one word: danger. We see the fire, we see the smoke, and our only instinct is to run away. But to a seasoned firefighter, that exact same scene is literally packed with vital information. If they see thick, black smoke, they know fuel, plastics, or chemicals are burning. What if the smoke is white or gray? Well, that could mean there's moisture or the fire is actually being starved of oxygen. They have to know this stuff, because opening the wrong door could accidentally feed the fire instead of stopping it. They aren't just looking at the chaos, they're reading the hidden system.
And that firefighter analogy hits the nail on the head when defining systems thinking. It's simply the ability to see the hidden patterns using the parts that you can actually observe. Because the truth is, systems are absolutely everywhere. Your career is a system. Your marriage is a system. Take your morning coffee run. You aren't just standing in a room with coffee beans, right? You're stepping into a system made of customers, a menu, the cashier, the barista, and that fancy espresso machine. All of these parts are connected by this invisible order flow. And once you start training your brain to look for that flow, you stop seeing random, disconnected events, and you start seeing the underlying machinery of the world.
Okay, but if systems are literally everywhere all the time, why do we constantly get so confused by them? Why do those smart people keep making those huge mistakes? Well, it turns out that human beings are pretty much wired to fall into three distinct traps that completely scramble our mental models. And if you don't know these traps are waiting in the dark for you, you're going to walk right into them.
The first trap is surprisingly simple, but man, is it devastating. It's applying the wrong approach simply because you misidentified the system you're actually in. As we'll cover in just a second, there are different types of systems, and every single one demands a radically different protocol. Think about it. If you bring a heavy hammer to a problem that really needs a delicate scalpel, your solution is going to fail miserably, and it will matter how hard you swing that hammer.
The second trap is all about how human nature loves to mess with systems. Have you ever heard the story of the British Cobra bounty? Back in the early 1900s, British officials in Delhi wanted to get rid of the dangerous cobra population. So they offered a cash bounty for every dead snake brought to them. Sounds totally logical, right? Well, the locals quickly realized they could game the system by secretly breeding cobras in their basements just to kill them and collect the cash. Ultimately, the policy designed to wipe out the cobras actually made their population explode. This is known as the cobra effect. When you attach a reward to the wrong metric, humans will optimize for the reward and completely ignore the original goal. The third trap that totally scrambles our brains is the delayed feedback loop. A lot of times, you take an action today, but you won't see the actual consequences for a really long time. Just look at the whole culture of smoking in the 20th century. For decades, almost everyone smoked. Why? Well, the feedback loop completely tricked them. In a matter of seconds, a cigarette offered stress relief, focus, and a way to bond with coworkers. But the hidden, compounding cellular damage, that wouldn't reveal itself as lung cancer for decades. When cause and effect are separated by huge gaps of time, it becomes incredibly difficult for us to properly evaluate the systems we're participating in.
So how do we stop falling blindly into these traps? We have to learn how to identify our exact environment. There are basically 4 distinct types of systems in the world. And honestly, knowing which one you are currently standing in is your ultimate superpower. To kick off our first system, let's talk about the legendary 1980s rock band Van Halen. They famously had this massive 400-page tour contract detailing their insane stage setups, but buried deep inside the rider was a tiny, specific clause. There had to be a bowl of M&Ms backstage with every single brown one removed. Now, for years, the media thought this was just pure, ridiculous rock star ego, but it absolutely wasn't. If the band walked into the dressing room and spotted a brown M&M, they instantly knew the venue managers hadn't read the contract carefully. And if they skipped over the candy clause, they probably skipped over the crucial safety protocols for the heavy stage rigging. That bowl of M&Ms was actually a brilliant, instantaneous system indicator.
And that Van Halen story perfectly outlines our very first category, the clear system. In a clear system, the relationship between cause and effect is completely obvious to everyone. Think about baking a cake with a step-by-step recipe, or a surgeon meticulously scrubbing in before an operation. The protocol here is extremely simple. Follow the exact checklist.
When you're in a clear system, your job is not to be a cowboy. It's not the time to be innovative or overly clever. Your job is to be precise. Checklists are your absolute best friend here, because they respect the simple fact that humans, no matter how smart, make mistakes.
But, as we all know, life isn't always that clear. Imagine an emergency room patient who walks through the doors and says, "My chest hurts." The symptom is incredibly obvious, but there are maybe 20 different possible causes for chest pain, right? And one of them might be lethal within the hour. This is what we call a complicated system. The connection between cause and effect totally exists, but it is deeply hidden underneath the surface, and it requires some serious, heavy-duty investigation to uncover.
So what's your game plan when you find yourself in a complicated system? We're talking things like intense tax planning, corporate acquisitions, or fixing a commercial airplane engine. The protocol here is slow down, analyze the data, and find the right expert. And notice I said the right specialist. A brilliant cardiac surgeon isn't going to know how to treat a patient with lung cancer. When things get complicated, your smartest possible move is to rely on deeply specialized analysis.
Now, a lot of people tend to confuse complicated with our next category, complex. To really see the difference, let's look at integrating AI into a business. Hiring a bunch of expensive consultants to build an AI roadmap and pick the right software, that is complicated. You just need the right experts. But actually getting your human employees to change their daily habits and adopt that new AI software, that is complex. Why? Because the minute you introduce unpredictable human behavior into the mix, the whole game changes.
In a complex system, you can't just hire a guru with a clipboard and a checklist. Think about raising a teenager, or trying to merge two entirely different corporate cultures together. The connection between cause and effect is constantly shifting. Honestly, it's really only visible in hindsight. What worked perfectly yesterday might fail completely today. So your protocol has to change. You must run small experiments. You have to stay adaptable, test the waters, and course correct in real time. In a complex system, your goal is to be directionally right rather than precisely right.
Finally, we arrive at the most terrifying environment of them all, the chaotic system. Back in September 1982, 7 people in Chicago tragically died after taking Tylenol capsules that had been laced with cyanide. At the time, absolutely nobody knew how widespread the poisoning was, which bottles were safe, or if more deaths were imminent. The link between cause and effect was entirely broken. In a chaotic system, like an earthquake, a sudden PR nightmare, or a massive cyber attack, you literally do not have the time to sit around analyzing the situation or waiting for a specialist to arrive.
In response to that horrifying crisis, Johnson & Johnson didn't convene a month-long committee to study the issue. They acted. They immediately pulled 31 million bottles of Tylenol off the shelves nationwide. The protocol for a chaotic system is immediate action. You must act right away to stabilize the environment and create a zone of safety. If you wait around to get the full picture, which is a deadly trap known as analysis paralysis, you are going to lose. Stabilize first, ask questions later.
So to recap our 4 environments, clear means you use checklists. Complicated means you bring in the experts. Complex demands small experiments. And chaotic means immediate stabilization. But of course, here's the catch. Real life never comes neatly color-coded. Nobody's gonna knock on your office door and announce, "Good morning, today we're facing a complex problem." You have to figure that out for yourself.
To figure out exactly which system you've just walked into, we can use a really fantastic diagnostic tool called the D.A.R.T framework. Think of it as a quick mental scan to diagnose your environment before you make a move, so you don't end up using the wrong protocol and making things worse.
Let's quickly walk through it. D stands for Deconstruct. You want to break that big, messy problem down into much smaller, bite-sized parts. A is for Analyze, and honestly, this is the most critical step of the whole thing. You need to ask yourself, what exactly is the connection between cause and effect here? Is it obvious? Is it hidden? Is it constantly changing? Or is it totally broken? That answer alone will tell you which of the 4 systems you're dealing with. Then R is Recognize. Have you seen a pattern like this before? And finally, T is Test. Run the absolute smallest possible experiment before you go all in and bet the farm. But actually applying this D.A.R.T framework has one massive obstacle. It is incredibly difficult to accurately evaluate a system while you are stuck inside of it. Think about sitting on a train at a station. The train right next to you starts to pull away, and for a split second, your brain gets totally confused. Are they moving or are you moving? From inside the train, the physical sensation is completely identical. But to someone standing outside on the concrete platform, there's zero confusion.
They can see exactly what's happening, so you have to find a way to step out of your train and onto that platform.
So how exactly do you get onto that platform? You use mentors, data, and time. Mentors are objective outside observers who don't buy into your emotional story. Data provides the brutal truth, because let's face it, numbers simply do not care about your narrative. And time reveals your actual trajectory. The author of our source material actually shares this really profound personal story. As a teenager, he ran away to become a monk, genuinely believing he was seeking a higher spiritual purpose. But eventually, through the honest pushback of mentors and looking at the brutal data of his own life, he realized he wasn't running toward meaning at all. He was just running away from his own fears.
And that deeply personal realization brings us to our final and maybe most important point today. The rules of systems thinking don't just apply to massive supply chains, business negotiations, or external chaos. They absolutely apply to our internal systems too, the strict boundaries and limits we place on ourselves and our own organizations. Very often we accept rules that aren't actually real. They're just the result of bad system designs.
Let me give you a great example. Conventional business wisdom tells us we face a binary choice. You can build a Ferrari, which is a high-margin luxury good, but at a very low volume. Or you can build a Toyota, super high volume, but much lower margins. And people just accept this as an unchangeable limit of reality. But look at a company like Apple. They produce roughly 350 iPhones every single minute. That is a premium, luxury, high-margin product being manufactured at a massive, everyday scale. Steve Jobs and Tim Cook didn't accept the traditional binary choice. They just redesigned the system to completely break the supposed limits of reality.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway for you from all of this. It's one thing to diagnose corporate structures or fix complex team dynamics, but the absolute hardest system you will ever have to redesign is the one you've built inside your own head. The story you've accepted about who you are, what you're actually capable of, and the limits you place on your own potential, that is all just a system. And like any system we've talked about today, if you actually take the time to deconstruct and analyze it, it can be entirely reimagined. You do not have to accept the binary choices in your life or your career. You can absolutely be both the Ferrari and the Toyota. So, as you step back onto the platform today to evaluate the hidden systems running your own life, I want to leave you with this final incredible thought from our source material. The world will meet you at your level of audacity and hope. So what limits are you going to redesign today? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.